Hello and welcome to April Fool's Day 2021. Hello, I am Chris Ringler, and this other gentleman is, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Paul Counelis. I'm Paul Counelis.
Hello, Paul Counelis. I am an author. I've been writing for 20 some years. I have about 20 books out. I have been publishing 3 editions of Barebone, Historian Cthulhu Sex, and got 2 honorable mentions in Year's Best Fantasy and Horror. So that's kind of sets the plate for you to know kind of who I am. So, Paul.
Yes. Author, freelance writer. I got a few dozen books out and published in Oregon, Fright Times, other places like that. Things that I'm proud of and like.
And so Paul, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I've been writing for a really long time, but there was like a break in between. So it was like a nice 10 years where I didn't write anything but songs. So it was like a different, viewpoint.
No, it's still like a pretty great avenue for kind of creativity.
Yeah, it's funny too because you see that it kind of entails the same setup in a way. You got to have a beginning, middle, and end, and you have to tell whatever story you're telling. It's just a different medium, which that just hit me recently. The songwriting thing.
No, right on. And I know, what people may not know. Last year, you and I endeavored to kind of start our own, I don't know, publishing
imprint.
Yeah, imprint. Yeah, I don't know what to, because I don't quite know what it. We don't know quite what it is. We know what we've done. We put one book out, an anthology of Bigfoot stories, which I think turned out pretty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm proud of that book.
Yeah,
I love it a lot.
So that's again that sets the table for what we were going to discuss, and what we were going to discuss is kind of our experience in publishing and in writing and everything, and kind of just talk about that stuff. So what got you started when you were started? When did you know you were serious about writing?
I had a feeling I wanted to write since I was a kid, and I turned in a paper in it was pretty early on, I think 7th grade maybe. I turned in an English teacher, went crazy over it, and she's like, I'm sending this to a place, and it got published in this little, Flint students writing book, and but I had to revise it first because it was super gory. And it was about a vampire that accidentally impaled himself. And she was like, so, yeah, they don't want that. And they turned down my drawing. So, but from then on in, I kind of always had it in the back of my mind that, I kind of always wanted to be a writer of some sort. I wasn't for sure what it would be even. But from then on, it was kind of in the back of my mind. And I got serious about it really only about 12 years ago. When I was reading Rue Morgan, and I got interested in their writing because the level of the writing was so good. It was just really, really deep and literate. And it wasn't like, nothing against the other monster. Rue Morgan was just like a step up, and I'm like, man, I really want to be associated with that. So I just started writing as many things as I could and submitting them to Rue Morgan until they're finally like, fine. Stop bothering us. that was really the serious thing when I got that first. It was a classic cut. It was a Lon Chaney senior movie, and that when I got that back and got not a rejection finally, I was like, okay, let's see what else I can do. It was really fun, you know.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I did all kinds of creative stuff as a kid, and I toyed around with writing. There was a story I wrote in 10th grade, I think, that kind of set things up so to really make me fall in love with writing, and made me really start to kind of get more serious about it. And yeah, I since the mid 90s, I was, very, very serious about it. And even when I wasn't putting, books out and stuff, I was doing zines and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Writing, I kept a journal for a long time, so I kept all of that stuff. But yeah, I always was writing. So I've been serious about it for a while.
So you're like 20 something years really, when you've been plugging away kind of at it.
Oh, for sure, easily. We both have kind of similar but different paths to how we got published. When I decided to get serious about it, probably getting my work out, I started, in 1997-ish. If not a little sooner, trying to find a publisher, and I was just in my 20s then, and still trying to, like literally early 20s, and trying to kind of find a lot of things, and then wasn't terribly savvy, but couldn't find anyone interested in publishing anything of mine. So I ended up back then it was subsidized publishing, and it was before self-publishing. So it was, to me it was basically, it's subsidized and then vanity and then self, is kind of how it went, because the idea of vanity was more, those were more kind of people putting out memoirs and autobiographies, and stuff, like, and paying for it to be done, but doing it basically because they felt their story needed to be told. And to me, self-publishing is a little different in that it's not necessarily about you as much. But
right.
But yeah, I found a company that offered to put my stuff out for X amount of money, and I can't remember. I know my folks, bless their hearts, paid it, and it was a bunch of loot, and I can't remember how much. And that was how my first book came out, and it was funny because soon as it was the process was fun. Like, they sent stuff back and forth. Like, again, I was I was not savvy in any facet, and I just was like, blew my mind to think I'd get something published. So I didn't really, the book looks booty because I wanted to kind of just do Path of Least Resistance, and I, like, that works. I did the cover, but like they kind of did all the other stuff, so it's kind of gross looking inside. It's very, very small type, like font size, and not a readable font, and blah blah blah.
Was that back from?
Yes, yeah, my first book, Back from Nothing. It came out in 1999, and it was funny because, oh gosh, not long after it was out, like they were going. Part of the deal was like, cool, we're gonna put it together, we're gonna edit it, we're gonna do all the heavy lifting, and then we're going to promote it locally, and to, like, you tell us publications you want us to send it out to, and we'll do that, because I was like Fangoria and blah blah blah. And they would supposedly send it out to local presses, like my local newspapers and all that. And not like a few weeks after it was published, they were like, yeah, I got a letter basically like, oh hey, we're going we're going into bankruptcy, we're going out of business. If you want your books, like, pay X amount and we'll ship them, or they're basically just going to discard. So we had to pony up, a bunch more money to have it all drop shipped. And yeah, one day it just like 20 boxes of books ended up on my front porch. Like, so, so I still have,
Wow.
and I gave those things away for a long time. I still have boxes and boxes around here. But yeah, it was, and it was 10 years until I got published again. So
I actually was writing poems for a long time. So that was first, that was poems. And it was published from the copy machine at my dad's work. But it had a binder, it had a binding and a title page and everything. Like he made about 25. He made about 25 copies, and so I started giving them away. Look, oh my God, it's poems. I was pretty young, but I was pretty hyped up about that, you know. And I think there still might be a couple of those floating around somewhere. Our buddy Glenn has one of those. That was 91, 90, 91, something like that. So that was, you know, it was just the idea of having your book in your hand and opening it up, and there's your poems and, you know, stories or whatever. And that was, I'd forgotten about that, but that was the first, like, where I was like, maybe I could do something more with this, but I didn't think the poems would really sell.
Yeah.
I love the poems, but someone's going to buy this, you know. I was just passing them off.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's kind of where where I came from too, is I came from kind of a DIY background. Like me and my friend were doing zines, and we had a magazine that we put together and got picked up for one issue nationally. And so I came from that sort of a background. So self-publishing and everything never bothered me. Like I put, you know, once the first book was out, I had started to do conventions and stuff to promote it. And, you know, one book doesn't really look impressive on a table at a comic convention. So I would put together chapbooks. So
nice.
is kind of had that DIY mentality. So yeah, like when the time came in 99, when I found I learned about CreateSpace. Well, actually, no, first I learned about Lightning Source as like an option, and, you know, ended up finding CreateSpace. But, you know, discovered self-publishing had finally come, and it was affordable. You know, like it didn't, like it just, I didn't have the hangups.
Yeah, me, the first book that I wrote, I wasn't writing it with any idea of publishing it. It was a bedtime story that I told my daughter. Like, you know, it took a couple weeks and kind of fleshed it out. It was Kendall Kingsley and the Scarecrow. And when I got looked into publishing and stuff, and I saw the same type of deal, I saw Lulu, and I was like, whoa, let me give that a shot, you know. I just really wanted books to have with me at cons and things like that. You know, like you said, no, one thing, I know that you edit your stuff a lot, and I am definitely the same way. I go over it over and over and over. Sometimes I have someone else take a look at it. So from my point of view, I just wanted it to be, you know, professional looking, and I didn't care if it was self-published or not. That never bothered me. It still doesn't, you know.
Yeah, thankfully it has changed over the last few years. You know, like I think it's weird. It was always weird to me, and it always will be weird. That there's this kind of respect for musicians and bands that do it themselves and put their own work out, and even poets
Yep.
will get kind of, certain, not all of them, because I mean, it's always like the chosen few, the ones that kind of break out, but even poets wouldn't be discounted because they put their own work out.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like literally the term vanity press kind of like would be thrust on anything that was self-published, like, oh, well, it's vanity. Well, I mean, any creative endeavor is vanity. Like, it's
Right.
if you didn't feel like you had something to offer, you wouldn't do it.
Right.
So I mean, it's silly. And my experience over the years, because every year I would get the new writer's guide,
Yeah.
would pour through it, trying to find markets or agents or anything. And that to me, my relationship with that had been, an agent doesn't want you unless you have a publisher. A publisher doesn't want you unless you have an agent. It's kind of like you can't get a job
Yeah.
if you have a car, can't get a car unless you have a job.
Right.
And I get it. Like, no, they both on both sides, they need to make money, and they can't just keep taking chances on everybody. That's why you get
Right.
what's Harry Potter meets Titanic. You get this as blockbusters, because that's something they can pitch. That's something they can,
Right.
imagine, like, okay, cool, that's two markets that are huge and blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
it was frustrating going through the writer's guide, because it would be like we are looking, each press was looking just for what they were looking for. And even if there's 1,000 presses, like you'd find 100 that were looking for horror. And even then it would be like 20 of them were like vampire horror or gothic horror, or
Yeah.
so it cuts that down even more and more.
Yeah.
And then
And some of them, they're just with you. If you don't have an agent, they won't look at it at all.
Yep.
And they say that explicitly.
And I mean, I don't know how many times we've heard, oh, well, it has to have this great cover letter, letter, and it's very compelling and this and that, or they're not going to, they're getting so many submissions. They're not,
Yeah.
they're having assistants look at it, so they're not compelled to read it. I mean, I wrote a book. I mean, this, nobody else really does, but I wrote a book on spec for someone last year. And,
Mm-hmm.
We're going on 8 months and
Mm-hmm.
still doesn't have a publication date. Like, the date fell back twice, and I still don't know. It's still supposed to be published by someone, not me. But that is in the ether, along with the idea that I don't quite know if it will be. And that's on the small side. And on the large side, it's like, if you even are picked up, it's like, cool, you're picked up. We're going to put your book out in 1 or 2 years, when we have a plan for it. And I always hated the idea of writing something, putting all this stuff into it, and then having it sit there. And then when it's released, it's like, we have this window, we're going to support it. And you can speak to this, like, we're going to support it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like, we're moving on to other work, and you can do whatever you're going to do.
Yeah. Oh, when I did get one book, was a kid's book, kids horror, and the publisher said, what's the pitch on this? And I said, well, it's kind of like Scooby-Doo, type thing. And he said, all right, we're going to call it Scooby-Doo meets Stranger Things. And, I thought that was kind of a thing, but I'm like, okay, yeah, that kind of works, I guess. That's fine. It's a little younger than that. It was a middle grade type book, actually. And the Spook Sleuths was what it is. And so it was that same deal. And the thing that I really liked about it, though, is that someone else was making ads for me and, taking it to shows and getting it in articles and things like that. But like you said, once that window's gone, that's it. That is it. Unless you're, like Random House or something like that, that's it. It's over. Once that window's done, it's over. So I basically ended up having to re-release the book myself again, just to have any kind of sales thing going, But it was an experience, and it was a good experience mostly. But it does speak to all of that and all the issues that authors are going to be looking at, especially up and coming authors. You know, it's not all bad because there are a lot of ways to get it out there. But man, you really have to pick and choose, and you really kind of have to have thin skin and and just kind of be ready for your book to sit there, you know. And hopefully, it will get picked up and get out there, but you just never know. And that window is so small, so many books. So yeah, it's a crapshoot.
Well, I mean, what the biggest lesson I guess the two big lessons I learned is, so when I went to World Horror Con in 2005 and did 2 pitches. Well, I guess there's 3 things. There's 3 things I learned over the years. And I learned, you know, and I pitched to Tor and to a smaller publisher, and it was 10-minute pitches. And I learned, you know, 1, you have to know your work and you have to know how to sell it. And I still don't know how to do that, but like you need to have, and in business, they call it the elevator speech, but like basically when someone's like, oh, what's it about? You want to be able to describe it in a way that is compelling, but not like, oh, it's The Walking Dead meets, you know, Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah.
Because to me,
yeah, exactly.
It sells your work short. I mean, if it works, it works. Like if that's what it takes, I mean, you're going to adapt. But I just hate that because it sells your stuff short because it leans it too much on that. Like somebody could be like, oh, I hate Walking Dead.
Right.
But, well, and it's not Walking Dead. It's more like Night of the Living Dead. You know, it's
right.
So you have to kind of say it without saying it. And I still have hard, like I say, I still have a hard time pitching my stuff. But I was trying to pitch it, but the publishers would rather tell you what they do because it's like a business. I mean, well, it's like getting a job, I should say, with the idea of they want you to know everything about them, and they just want to know if you're going to fit. Like, here's what we do. We're McDonald's. We do that. Blah 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 blah. Here's all of our stuff. Can you make a burger? Well, yes. Yeah, but there's 20 people that can make it. You know, it's like how well can you make a burger? And I mean, the third thing, just like most of this stuff, as in with getting a job, is relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Cthulhu Sex Magazine, which is a long defunct magazine, because I met the guys that published it in New York at World Horror, and I kind of made that relationship with them, and they ended up accepting a submission of mine. I got in bare bone because like the guy who like edited it, Kevin Donahue, who is a Bizarro author, and it was funny because he like shotgun emailed people about his book, we should all gather in the garden. Just a random email to people, I think authors and stuff, and it wound up, when I had a Yahoo account, and it wound up in my spam or trash or something, and I just happened to look in it and read it over, and it sounded interesting. The book sounded interesting. He sounded interesting. He and I hit it off, became friends, and I went to World Horror with him, and met, you know, him and Carlton Mellick, who's a popular Bizarro guy. I met Jeremy Robert Johnson, hung out with John Skip with them, like met all these great people. And it was because I built that relationship. And Kevin took a chance on my work for Barebone, and he ended up publishing 3 stories, and 2 of them got honorable mention in World's Best Fantasy and Horror, which again, like, you know, 1,000 people get honorable mention, but like 10,000 people are writing stories. So it's cool to me.
Right. Yeah, it's really cool.
So I mean, a lot of that, like I say, it's just building those relationships and trying to be cool with people, and not like, every time you ever hear a horror story, it is, oh, this guy, you know, this person got rejected and then was like, well, you're going to regret it, and kind of goes crazy. And obviously not how you do this. Like you can't, you've got to be a little cocky, a little self-assured, but you've got to have, you know, understand, like, you know, not everybody's gonna get into what you do. So you just kind of
Yeah.
Got to be cool with people.
Right. Right. And that is a big thing. You know, relationship building is big. I mean, a lot of it, right place, right time is kind of a big thing. But yeah, you have to kind of play the game, but also it helps to be sincere and to not be a jerk. Those things very much help, even if you're getting treated in a way that you don't think is fair.
Well,
But yeah,
patience was a big part of it, because
there is a,
you know, with Rue Morgan stuff, patience paid off for you.
yeah, 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 and I was pretty determined with that too, because that's what I wanted to write for. So I just kept on, you know, but I was going to other places in between so I could kind of build the resume up. So when I did give a pitch to Rue Morgan, I had something to show them. So I had got an article about spook shows into Fright Times, which is a haunt magazine, and I sent that. So, you know, they were at least like, oh, well, that's pretty good writing, you know, keep letting us, you know what you're working on, basically, kind of thing. And they were cool about it. They kept the door open just a little until finally I sent something that was like, okay, I think we might actually be able to use this. And then, you know, I had to rewrite it. I had to rewrite it 3 or 4 times. I learned a ton just from that very first Rue Morgan article, about being able to deliver, you said, what they want. And that's why Rue Morgan magazines like to have their own distinct voice. Like when you read Fangoria, it reads like Fangoria. You know, when you read Horror Hound, it reads like Horror Hound, because they know what they want. You have to, you know, rise to that, you know, or whatever it is. You have to come around to it. So I learned a lot just from a couple articles in it, Rue Morgan, probably the most that I've learned. And I felt like I was getting my butt kicked a few times with it. You know, like it just felt like, oh, I've rewritten this article 5 times, you know, front to back. It taught me a lot and about to deliver what they expect you to deliver. And that's just a magazine. So, you know, if you're writing a whole book for someone, take a big chance on you and get it out there and everything, you have to be able to be patient, and you have to be able to stay focused and stay in it. And it can be pretty tough. I mean, almost every author would attest to that. There's probably a few people that got in there and were just like, bang, but that doesn't happen very often.
And one of the things I never would have imagined, like at World Horror, again, because I kind of learned a lot there. Just, you know, a couple days I was there, I was shocked at how many of these authors were well regarded. They sell, you know, they're not bestsellers, but they sell regularly. They publish regularly. You know, they have fans, but they have day jobs, and there's
right.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that going in, and then on the other side, they kind of like, oh, well, yeah, like, you know, you must make, you know, you must at least be able to pay your bills and stuff. And I think they don't realize that people like a Stephen King, you know, Clive Barker, you know, John Saul, Dean Koontz, all those are rare. Like Stephen King is we've never seen, like Dickens is the closest one we've seen to that. Like literally, like you have to go back to Dickens to like the cultural impact, like that kind of a, and King's been around for the late 70s. So, I mean, he's still enduring, and with the media that he's put out, like there never has really been an author like him.
Yeah.
So it's hard to, like, you know, compare things to him. But I think folks just kind of got to get past that notion of making a living and stuff, like, you know, and what, you know, so the whole point, I think, is, you know, as we kind of draw down to it, is, you know, if you're going to write, just kind of go into it with open eyes and an understanding that, like, you can for sure make money. I know tons of people who make money at this. It's just you would have to get as lucky as you are good to make a living at it.
Totally. Yeah. And you know, like if some of the best advice on writing that I've ever read was Bradbury, because he said, I mean, if you're going to listen to anybody, Bradbury's a good person to listen to. And he said, if you want to write, he's like, write a story a week. And then you'll have, at the end of the year, you'll have 52 stories. And maybe a couple of them will be good, you know? But he says, just write, wake up and write. And don't worry about what you're going to do with it right then. Just try to write something good. And to me, that's really good advice. I mean, I don't know how feasible it is to actually write 52 stories, but but that whole idea that eventually you're going to maybe break through and write some good stuff, and then pretty soon that will be a consistent thing that you're doing, and then you can figure out what you're going to do with it. That makes sense to me. And it keeps you going when you're not selling stuff left and right, and you are getting rejection slips, because that's going to happen. So, you know, you have to kind of just stay with it. You have to also believe in yourself. That's super duper important. You have to believe that, at least that you're writing what you would like to read, or that you're writing what you want to write. You have to be able to do that. Even when you're playing the game or doing something for somebody else, it has to be that. Unless you're getting paid a shitload of money, then just do it, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think, to me, the great thing of this era is you have so many venues.
Yeah.
You have, like, if you want to start super small, you could do 2-sentence stories on Twitter.
Yep.
You can post stories on a blog. Or like I started Tumblr way back before Tumblr kind of turned into like just kind of a crappy place. I started putting stories on there that turned into a book. Just there's so when you're getting out there, I mean, shucks, like with the Bradbury, if you just did like a story a month, that still gets you 12 stories. Like, so if you need to start,
right,
it's a lot of folks I always end up talking to, like, have trouble, like, oh, I wish I could write so, and I always just tell them, like, finish it. Even if you think it's horrible, finish it, because you can fix it in the edit.
Yeah.
Like, that's when you basically through and get it done, and then you can start, what you intended, and it can be hard to get through it, but once it's done, you have something to work with. You're like, okay, cool, this works, this doesn't work, this worked.
Have the clay at least there.
Yeah. And if you talk yourself out of it, well, then it's another story or book or whatever in a drawer that, oh, well, yeah, I was going to finish that. No, yeah, someday I'll get to this. Like, you just got to do it. Like, and you have blogs and, like, say, all these other things. So if you can get feedback, you can just get work out there. With self-publishing, if you go through traditional means, and I think everybody should at least try it, because I mean,
absolutely,
everybody is you always want someone to pay for it, and you don't have to. And it's just
and market it.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot that goes into, like, self-publishing is not the most fun, because you have to do your own every aspect. You write it, you edit it, or get someone to edit. You have to do the cover, you have to do the layout, you have to promote it. You have to keep promoting it. You have to, like, pitch it to people. And I like some aspects of it, because I like that, my first book to my newest book, like, I'm never done promoting those. Like, they're never dead books to me.
Yeah.
But it is hard. It's hard to keep paying about stuff that's 20 years old.
Right.
But I mean,
another thing is about the self-publishing is you can even hire an editor. Yeah. And if you're not a great editor, or if you think it's shaky, you should hire an editor, because it's worth it. It's your work. So you want to put something out there that's good, whether or not someone else is backing it up or picking it up. At least if you're doing it yourself, you want to know that it's the best that it can be. Mm-hmm.
That it's what you wanted it to be. Like, that's the most important thing.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I mean, truly, like, my I'll always, all things aside, like, the most important thing to me is just to write and to finish it. Like, Because I mean, 'cause you can write down ideas and stuff, and I had a box of ideas, and I still have the stuff downstairs, just in my office in the basement. Just in case I ever wanted to come back to stuff, you'll look, oh yeah, but like you've got to be able to finish something. And I mean, the cool thing is too is like if you get burned out, like and don't want to do fiction, you can write reviews, you can write blog opinion pieces. There's all kinds of things. There's avenues to get you so you're still writing and you're still learning how to write and you're still getting in the habit of writing. And it's just, it may not be the exact thing you wanted to write, but it's still the habits are being built that are good to have.
Yeah, it's kind of like exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another, not to keep on harping on Bradbury, but that's another thing that he said. If you're not writing what you want, or if it's not working, write something else. Then come back to that and just keep on, exploring different things. I mean, people are getting book contracts from fan fiction now. You never know. You never know. Just write your stuff and do your thing. That's like, that's important.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, and I mean, one of the things again, like that you learn from, doing self stuff and all that is in doing shows. Like I've learned kind of what works and what doesn't with selling stuff. Like you got to learn what works for you in selling your work, because you've got to be able to sell it, like, because you be able to sell it, pitch it. And you've got to know again what works, what doesn't, because you don't want to be heavy handed in selling it to people, because that will turn people off. It works on some it doesn't. So you've got to know kind of how to work the audience and how to promote things. And it's hard, but I mean, it's rewarding when you do it. I mean, I've always said I want to sell books to strangers. I mean, it's great to sell them to people that you know and love and stuff, because it's great to get that support, and it's not any less than selling to a stranger. But I always wanted the strangers because it's someone who has no investment in you, and that's money. So the only reason they're paying money to you is they want a good story.
Yep.
And you just got to hope that you give them one.
Yep. And the best compliment ever is when a stranger comes back and buys the second one.
Yeah.
And then then you're like, okay, cool. Yep. Then
Yep, absolutely. Like that's kind of why you do it. At the end of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, and more than anything, like, I thought it would be for two guys that have been doing this for a while. We both sold some books. We both kind of seen how publishing works. We've seen kind of the ins and outs of bits and pieces of things. I thought it would be, valuable to kind of rap about it for a minute and just, the process of kind of how that works.
Real quick, can I talk about the recent thing that happened with me? Because I think that's another thing that's kind of important. I sent a pitch to a company of a completely different book, and it didn't fit their, what they're looking for. And I kind of had an idea that it would, but I just wanted to send the pitch out to him. And he wrote back and he was like, well, this doesn't fit, but I like your writing. Can you do this? And I was like, yeah, I absolutely can do that. So a whole different thing come from just trying, just getting it out there and just trying, because you never know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's being open to things. And like the book I wrote last year, like it was somebody I knew reached out looking to see if I knew anybody that could write a type of book.
Yeah. And
I was like, no, I don't. And then I thought about it. I was like, I'd never written anything like this, and I figured I'd take a crack at it. And it's what I wrote. I'm happy with it because it's pretty fun. It's it ticked the boxes that I needed to for them, and it still is kind of has my personality, and I like that. And it was it was good to have a challenge.
Great.
But
excellent.
Again, a lot of it, so much of this stuff is relationships and taking chances and
adapting.
Yeah, adapting.
Yep.
I never, when I started, I never ever thought I would write kids book. I never thought I'd write a novel. I've written several now. I never thought I'd write kids books. I've written a handful.
Right.
Got recognition recently at the state level for that. Never thought I'd write a fantasy. I wrote a fantasy trilogy. Like, as you know, teenage me never would have imagined any of that. And it's just you be willing to, like say, adapt, because you never know what your tastes become, or what, like, you know, if you want to write for markets or something, that you know what you're going to have to do.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. That's a good thing to keep your eye on, I think, just adapting and being open to things. That's pretty damn important, I'd say.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's never bad to have an eye on what's big, but I don't think you ever want to be a slave to it. Because I remember I started writing my zombie book in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of, you know, it's a book of short stories, but I was kind of meandering with it. And then once zombies got big in the early thousands, I was like, I'm not going to fool with it, because by the time it would ever come out, zombies are going to be dead, you know, dead. But like that thing's, it's going to be over. So it was kind of like, you know, wanting to write a vampire book when vampires were big for a minute. You know, it's not bad to try to catch the wave if you have something that genuinely fits it and isn't be like shoehorned, but you also don't want to be the last one to the party that everybody kind of just walks past.
Right. Yeah. Yes. That's a good point.
It's a hard balance. You know, but the thing is too, like, good is good.
Yep.
Even if you miss that wave, if you wrote something good and compelling and you can get it in people's hands, I don't think that, it's not like somebody's going to say, well, I mean, let's face it, if a great vampire book came out right now, it would still sell.
Yep.
Because great is great. So
even though vampires suck, zombies are dead. Randy Zimmerman's joke.
Oh my God.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. You can, if you write something good, it'll come through.
Yeah. And you know, writing from your heart and kind of like, you know, with that passion and honesty is what's going to matter.
Yep. 100%.
Well, awesome, Paul. This has been fun. You know, and as we mentioned, Paul and I kind of have our little Goblin Holler signpost out with our book, Unimaginable Tales of the Sasquatch. So that's kind of, you know, we have our own writing that we do, but that was our kind of what we did together. And we gathered some folks we know and wrote some Bigfoot stories and got an amazing artist to do the cover. And you know, we're already on to the next project. So I hear it's going to be a good one.
I hope so. I don't know. I'm kind of worried about this writer.
Well, awesome. Happy April Ghouls Day, Paul.
Yes, happy April Ghouls Day to you. I totally enjoyed this.
Absolutely.
I actually heard a few things about you that I didn't know, which was fun.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Yeah, this was super fun. I will talk to you soon, and I hope whoever out there may have watched this, I hope you got something out of it. You can always find Paul and I on the socials and out in the world if you ever have any questions or just want to kind of know more about how we got to where we are, which is, you know,
absolutely. And you know,
10 miles away from one another.
Yeah, but you know what? Just write. That's the thing. I know it's a big cliche, but just write, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't write. That's the thing. Just do your thing. Right.
Yep. You're the only one. I mean, in the end, you're the only one that can stop you. So.
Yep.
That's about it. Awesome. Well, I will talk to you soon, Paul. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Happy April Ghouls Day.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye.